the Sportsline Podcast here on the CHCH media platform. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Folks, nowhere in the country are people like you starving for sports content, especially when it pertains to local athletes, teams, and executives. Today, an individual who played the game at a very high level and is now paying his experience forward. Ask yourself this question: who on earth would want to stand in front of a puck that could be traveling at you in excess of 100 miles per hour, maybe even more? Well, the sport is hockey and the position is goaltender. From his days as a novice and minor midget backstopper for the AAA Burlington Eagles, Bryce O'Hagan has been shutting out shooters, and his skills took him to the heights of representing the nation while being drafted and opening eyes for the Sioux Greyhounds and Peterborough Petes. Well, they always say that goalies are a different breed. Let's find out and bring in Bryce right now. Thanks for joining us. I think this is going to be an interesting chat because we always talk about a sport, but we're actually going to talk about a position, and goaltending has always been so special for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Bubba. I'm really excited for it. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, what was the passion about goaltending? I think when we were playing hockey as a kid, we generally want to be the guy scoring the winning goal with no time left on the clock, and usually that means a goaltender got beat. Why goaltending?
For me, my parents said from a young age, even when I played house league, I played defense, and I was always drawn back towards the net. And then every opportunity I had, I kept putting myself back into the net. And then after, when I had the opportunity to try out for rep, my parents said every time I was asked what position I played, it was goalie. So they didn't really have a choice by the end of that.
Well, in your time, and we always, especially at that age, we have a guy. There's a guy. I don't know. For me, I never played net on ice, but I'm fascinated about it. And of course, I just marveled at Dominik Hasek and what he did, and the fact that, I don't know, as you would probably tell me, his style was no style.
Yeah.
Who was your guy?
For me, it was Curtis Joseph for sure. Watching the Leafs games with my parents and cheering them on, and watching him in his pads, loving all of his gear, his helmet, how important in the NHL history it is, right? The Cujo mask was such a big visual for kids, right? Mm-hmm. We all wanted to wear that mask at one point.
Did you draw one up and put it on?
Absolutely, yeah.
We all kind of did that with the street hockey days, and I always think about this too as a goaltender. And I talked about the puck coming at that pace, and maybe at that age, maybe not 60 miles, 100 miles per hour, but getting close to as you get on in age. Can you tell me how you break that fear at that young age of a puck coming in high, even some of those hard wristers?
Yeah, I mean, some kids, like you said, goalies being a different breed, just don't have that fear in them, right? Gear today, even from 20 years ago, is so different, and then you look back 40 years, it's a completely different position, right? So a lot of the gear that these kids wear nowadays is very safe. So that combined with a kid that just has the mentality, they'll do whatever they can to stop a puck. Not too many of them want to get out of the way of it, right?
But what do you do? I know even if I'm in a hockey game, standing behind the net and a puck comes at me, I flinch or I close my eyes. Yeah. How do you train the goaltender not to do that?
You just shoot slow, and then you just build up speed from there, and then getting the kids to kind of build trust at our goalie lessons, and realizing, hey, we're not here to hurt you, we're here to push you to get better. They have it's very few and far in between you have goalies that come out of that are truly afraid of the puck, right?
You talked about playing AAA and at a younger age, and again, these younger ages, you're coming up through the system. You're playing for Burlington, which is a big program at the time. I think there's pressure. I think there has to be pressure playing any position, but goaltender, I think there has to be a special sort of pressure to it. How did you handle that?
I say to kids all the time that even though you're a part of a team, you're almost on your own little island, which is a good thing in the sense of you're able to kind of separate yourself between wins and losses. If you show up, you give your team a chance to win, you recognize you do your job. At the end of the day, you can't score goals. So understanding you signed up to stop pucks and recognizing that you have a great opportunity to show up for your team, right? And I think a lot of kids, it's just the way you look at it and how you perceive it. It's not I have to play a game, it's I get to play a game, right?
But what about the personal experience for you even as a child? And I'm sure that's what you're teaching your kids right now and building them up that way. But even you going through it at that younger age, and I can think of it through, I'll kind of break it down this way. I've been to a lot of minor hockey, girls and guys, younger I would say ages from anywhere from 10 to 18, we'll say, and watching. And sometimes the parents can be real hard. And that's one thing if you're one of the forwards or your kids, the defenseman. And everyone has a bad day.
Yep.
The goalie has a bad day. The parents can be kind of tough. And I don't know, do you feel that when you're on the ice or see that? And I know that's something that, hockey parents can sometimes be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, even that is kind of kid to kid for me. I was very good at being able to focus on what's kind of in front of me and being on the ice, and my job's to stop the puck. Mm-hmm. But for sure, like kid to kid, you'll see them look up into the stands and see how their parents or parents around are reacting towards them. The higher the level, the stronger these kids' mentality at being able to block it out. But I know for me, it was just one of those things that you got completely used to, and that it's more or less you're blocking out the outside noise and just trying to focus on doing your job.
When did you know you were good?
I think probably around 14, 15 was when I was like, oh, I can actually turn this into something bigger than what I ever thought. And I was a pretty naive kid growing up. I didn't even really know what the OHL was until I was about 14, 15. And then when I found out, I realized I was like, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And when I realized and heard about the draft, I was like, I want to be the first goalie drafted. And just having that drive of being like, no matter what I do, what league I go into, having the goal of trying to push myself to be the best, mm-hmm. It was never a question. It was always just, that's what I'm driven to do. Mm-hmm.
When I talk to kids from the old Hamilton Bulldogs, Brantford Bulldogs, you were drafted by the Sioux Greyhounds and played with the Peterborough Petes in the tail end of your junior career. What's that like being away from home as a junior hockey player?
It was tough. I moved out, like growing up in Burlington and playing up in Sault Ste. Marie. That's an 8-hour drive, and I made the team as a 15-year-old. And I always kind of joke around, like my parents, none of us brought up like clothes for me to stay up there for more than training camp because we didn't really think they were going to pick a 15-year-old. And then I went out to camp and I played well. And then the moment when like mom and dad drive away from you and you're in your billet house and you realize, oh, they're not coming back, like I'm here. And it becomes, we talk about like the business of hockey. Like for me, it became a job, and there's definitely times where you miss home and you realize how tough that can be, but you're so focused on what you're doing that it's hard to, again, even just realize that you do miss home because you're there for what you're for a job, right? Like you're on the ice, between working out on the ice, you're there at the rink for 6-7 hours a lot of the time. So it's not like you have time to really recognize anything you're missing, right?
But you get the opportunity to represent the nation and put that Team Canada jersey on. And I've heard this from several players, even in different sports. I don't care if it's under 15 or the senior team. Anytime you get to wear the maple leaf, that it's something special. Is it that true?
Absolutely. I know for my camp, for the team that I made the first time, it was in U18. It was for the Ivan Halinka tournament, and we played in Piastany, Slovakia. But the camp was in Calgary, and my dad came out to watch the camp, and I was one of 4 goalies chosen to go out, and one kid, the only goalie from Ontario. And just at the end of the camp, like they're telling you if you're making it or not, and just having that moment of being like, I know I played so well, I made this team. And that feeling when they announced that, hey, you're a part of this team, was definitely like one of the best moments of my life. And then even I was talking to one of my goalies last night where I said, when at the time I thought it was going to be a moment in my career, going on to the NHL and everything further, and I look back and I realized that was probably the biggest moment of my career, right? And it was a great feeling, and being able to travel with the team, and you're wearing a Canada jersey, you're wearing all the Canada swag everywhere you go. It's definitely a proud moment for sure.
It's got to be pretty good instead of being in the orange school buses.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got treated on a national level, and like, mistake me here, I got some names here that I think might have been on your team, like Ryan O'Reilly, Cassian, Goodbranson, and you're playing against guys like Tarasenko. Whoa.
Yeah.
Like, and now you see those guys and where they went on to, and you're saying to yourself, I know how to stop you. I know how to deal with you. That's got to be awesome feeling.
For sure. And then you look back, even like a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, like the work and drive that he had. Like, we would have a game at 7 p.m. and he would be at the rink at 2 p.m. stick handling and doing a workout before all prior. Like, it's no surprise why these guys made it to the level they did in the drive and NHL capacity that they did, just because of the sheer dominance and workforce that they had day in, day out.
So you do some really special things that so many people never get to that level of representing your country, playing AAA at the young level, playing CIS, playing for the Ontario Hockey League. And then there are decisions that have to be made about where you're doing, where your career is going. And when you came to that moment, can you explain to me what your decision process was?
For me, it was when I was playing youth sports at Ontario Tech, and it was just, I recognized that I lost the love for it, right? Where going to the rink wasn't fun anymore, and I kept asking myself, what am I doing this? Like, what is my end goal? Like, goals and being focused on what I'm trying to accomplish is always being a big thing. And at that point, hockey became like a murky aspect in my life, and I couldn't see the forest through the trees and understanding where I wanted to go. And every Tuesday we would have a 6 a.m. practice for 2 hours. And the big moment for me when I realized that I didn't want to do it anymore was when every time we'd step on the ice at 6 a.m. I'd tell the team, I'm not going down for the first hour. I don't want to get hit by the puck right now. And that's where I just realized, like, I don't love this anymore. And a big aspect is, I look back, I wish I had someone kind of help me navigate that kind of a bit more and be like, hey, this is what you can do, this is the path you can take. And I never really had that guy when I got into like the junior levels, a good role model to be able to help navigate and just more or less bounce questions off of. Right, a lot of the times I felt like I was trying to figure it out on my own, which, I mean, a lot of guys in the hockey world, I'm sure they feel like that as well. So that was a big part of just I lost a lot of love for it and just felt lost in what I was trying to do.
Was it politics? Or was it just you personally?
I think it was just more or less me personally, just again losing a love for it and just kind of realizing, like, where am I supposed to go from this, right? Okay. Like, it felt like the NHL was an impossible dream at that point, and even looking at going to Europe, I had to choose between using my OHL scholarship money and taking a contract over in Europe. And at that point, I was like, I'm not going to the NHL. I'm not going to save enough money if I do go over to Europe, because I know I'm going to go spend it all. So I was like, at this point, I'm just going to go to school and try to focus on my future. And even at that point, I had no idea what I loved aside from hockey. So when I tried to go to school, I went to school for 4 different things just because the OHL was covering my money, covering my scholarship. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, and that's honestly why I became a coach. Was I tried all these different things that I thought I loved or thought I would love, and then I fell back into hockey and had like a aha moment of, oh my God, this is what you do truly love.
And that's amazing to me, that even though one part of the sport you were done with, you'd had enough with, but yet there was still part of the sport that still had its calling. It was just a different job now. Yeah. And that you're rubbing off all of that experience, all those amazing saves, the goals that led in, the wins, the losses, all of it now ties into a different type of teaching. But not everyone's a teacher. I think of some of the greatest players in the game of any sport, and some of them are pretty lousy coaches. What made you think that I can translate all my experience to much younger kids?
For me, I just recognized that, like, when I played hockey, everything was in a rush. Like, I was like, I'm going to be again, how I said, try to be the best as fast as I can and go to the highest levels and all that kind of stuff. So when I became a coach, I took the opposite mindset of being like, I'm going to take my time in development. I'm not going to go try to coach junior goalies right away. I was like, I'm going to break this down from the youngest of ages. So I started with basically 7-year-olds, 7 and 8-year-olds, and I just took my time working with them and understanding how can I articulate my thought process to them, and made sure I, again, just more or less took time to make sure that they fully understand, and just being able to see the game from a different light and a different mindset from when I played. And I always say to people, like, the 2008 born kids were the kids that I more or less grew up with. They were 7, 8 years old, and they don't have the same coach now then versus who I was back then, right? Like, I've grown so much, and just being able to take the game and view the game in such a different light has been such a eye-opening aspect for me, and just recognizing that I can be 70-year-old and still be a coach, where I only had such a short period of time to play and felt the need to rush everything.
So in essence, you're telling me that even though you played at some of the highest levels possible, you were still learning about the sport and the actual act of being a goaltender.
Absolutely. Like I think like a lot of people say, like hindsight. Just with hindsight, I look back and I wish I had the mindset now than when I played. Right, just recognizing that not every goal you let in is the biggest failure in your life, and just the pressure that you put in, day out, and having someone again to bounce things off of, and have someone in your corner to be able to discuss the emotional, mental side of the game just as much as the physical aspect of it.
The best part for you probably, I'll ask you, I shouldn't answer the question for you, but is that you get to do it at home. I mean, a place that you're familiar with in being in Burlington, and a program that you graduated through.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that, just being able to start with the young kids and getting myself into a point where I'm able to work with 30 teams now, and I have a great team that works with me, Taylor McDonald and EJ Millen Price, that work at my rink as well, that we all work together between the Eagles and the Barracudas, helping out all their goalies and being able to help or pass our knowledge on to them.
What about, and I'm seeing this is because it's getting so big, this PWHL, is there an option for you to look at the female goaltenders too?
For sure. We've had some pros come through our rink, and that's all because of EJ. And I think she was the first person that I hired, and I grew up with only sisters, so I recognize how important it was to have a female role model, and she's done a phenomenal job bringing up the confidence of young girls. Because I always say to the girls as they get older, there's going to be an aspect of being a girl goalie that I'll never be able to understand. I don't know what the dressing room is like. I don't know what like going to high school is like as a girl goalie. So EJ's able to, she's lived it, she's done it. So her being able to pass her knowledge on, not just only as a goalie, but also as a human, is such a big aspect.
What about is there some type of certification that you needed to go through? And obviously, I mean, again, because of your experience, you could list down all these things that you've done, and then someone who's maybe wants their child to be taught to someone. But how do you prove to them that, you know what, yeah, I've got your back, I've got your kids' back, and I'm going to teach them?
Hockey Canada does have a few certificates that you can take to become certified as a coach, but a big thing like in this is just more or less word of mouth, right? You go out, you do a lesson with a kid, and the parents and that goalie start to believe in you, and then they pass that along. And it went kind of no further for me, where within my first year as a goalie coach, I had 10 full-time clients. Then by the end of my first season, I was working with over 100 different kids within a month. So it grew very quick, and having my facility that I do at Power Play in Burlington is a big aspect. Just the fact that I can sit at my rink and kids just come in one after another for lessons. So, but being able to have the knowledge, but also just knowing that, like you said, that you're there for those kids and those parents, and being able to answer questions that they may have about anything.
If you had to describe yourself as a goaltender, what style would you say that you were all about?
A poor man's Carey Price.
Okay. Okay. So that means you relied on the butterfly a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of focusing on positioning, trying not to scramble too much, being just big and in control with my movement. So
then when you teach the kids, and one is a left-handed catcher, a right-handed catch, or they're more of a flopper, they're more of a stand-up type, how do you envelop your skills into the individuality of each kid?
Good question. So a big thing that I've learned even from the start of my goalie coaching to now, like I do what I call a blueprint for a kid. So at the end of the day, I talk to them. I said, if I were to break goaltending down to its simplest form, this is the three things I look at. Your job is to understand the space you need to fill, right? If I'm looking at a net dead center with no goalie in it, I'm looking at 24 square feet of open space. I put a goalie in it, now we're taking away that space. We talk about being center and square. The second thing is, if I look and rotate to the puck, after I make a save, I should always hit the middle of the net. Rule number 3 is we build a light blueprint on how we want to play every situation, but at the end of the day, we just battle and do whatever we can to keep the puck out of the net. I always say, I've never heard a coach say, I don't like how that goalie stopped the puck. So at the end of the day, you keep the puck out of the net, no coach is going to care. So a big thing I really realize is exactly what you said, is every kid has their own personality, how they view the game, how their body is built in regards of how they can go down or go into the post. So you can't really force a kid in the sense of, this is how you need to make this save. You have to work with them and communicate with them. This is the way I see it being successful for you. What do you think? What do you see? What do you feel?
And when you look at these students, and I'll call them students, right in the beginning when you're dealing with them, what would you say that you can identify this guy's good or this girl's good or this individual needs work?
When they're young, the biggest thing is just more or less, can they skate and stand, right? Can you get from point A to point B, right? Because these kids are so young. If they're in that like 7 to 10 age, they're just at a complete disadvantage in the fact of the size of the net. I always say to goalies that the net doesn't get bigger as you get older. The fact that by the time they're in that 7 to 10 age, a lot of teams that win are the teams that can score at the top half of the net more than the others. So anybody who's more or less athletic and can get from point A to point B is going to catch your eye from the beginning. And then that's probably the biggest thing I work on with young kids is just skating and like track and glove and blocker work and just athleticism.
Every goalie goes through some type of slump or things aren't going well or they can't see the puck, and you see when things are going well, the puck looks like a balloon.
Yeah.
But there's an opposite sometimes. So that mental aspect of keeping confidence, how do you get into the kids' heads? And I'm presuming they're not as mentally tough at that age, but like, how do you get into their heads that way?
A big thing is going back to that blueprint and kind of recognizing, hey, if I'm making a mistake, where along that blueprint did I go wrong? And even just really going back to basic skills, right? All the NHL and world-class goalies all have world-class basic skills. There isn't some secret formula into what's going to make you a great goalie. It's working hard and working on your skills daily, regardless if it's on the ice or off the ice. So a big thing for young kids is just accountability, right? Are you doing the little things properly? When we practice, either with me or with your team, are you practicing with purpose, or are you just doing the drill because the drill says to go from here to here? And a lot of the kids that are able to kind of get out of that funk or snap out of it are kids that really trust themselves in going back to basics and recognizing these are the skills that make me a strong goalie, and recognizing that, just like you said, it's up and down and it's not forever, right? You don't need to carry these goals like the weight of the world day in, day out.
How tall are you?
6'3".
So you're a pretty big guy,
yeah.
And maybe you were kind of the new generation, because I can think, I'm a little older than you, and I can think of some of these goaltenders that I was watching when I was a lot younger, and Alan Bester, and Darren Pang, but all those guys are like 5'8", 5'9". Now I see these guys, they're like, I can think of Stolars, not on skates. He's 6'5".
Yep.
Goaltenders are monsters now.
Yep.
Are you noticing that at that young level that the kids are bigger and bigger?
A big thing, like even so when I was scouted by NHL teams, the first question I got by every single team, didn't matter who it was how big is mom and dad, how much do they weigh, and what do they do for a living, right? So even today, like when we're talking to minor hockey teams and minor hockey goalies, like that's one of the first couple questions I get from coaches is how big is mom and dad, right? So people believe, and for obvious reasons, if you're bigger, you're going to fill more space. I know lots of young goalies that aren't the biggest that have incredible skating ability. They have great spatial awareness and understanding the space they need to fill. So I think, yes, I believe the goaltending is going bigger and bigger, but I also don't think you need to be 6'5" to be an incredible goalie. There are lots of kids that are in that 5'10" to 5'11" range that are great puck stoppers. You look at a goalie like UC Saros, who I think on paper is 5'10". He's one of the best goalies in the NHL. His skating ability, his tracking is world class, right? So yes, they're getting bigger, but they're still young small goalies that can really stop a puck.
You know, it's funny. It's a question that kind of came up that I think about with goaltenders nowadays, especially in this country, and that there's a belief that in Canada, the goaltending position has been bypassed in terms of excellence to the States, to other nations.
Yeah.
And to the point that there was a big controversy in the Four Nations face-off as to who would be our starting goaltender. For as long as we've been watching international team hockey, there was always a guy.
Yeah.
Like Belfour, or there was Cujo, or there was Waugh, there was Belfour, Brodeur, sorry. There was always a guy.
Yeah.
Are you confident that goaltending, the goaltending position is still doing okay in this country?
I think for sure we're doing well, but I think it's little things like how I was mentioning about the net sizes, right? Like a lot of kids, what's his name? Steve Valiquette from the New York Rangers. He was talking about on the Fan 590, and I was listening. He was talking about how he coaches goalies that are 14 years old, and it's very hard to coach goalies that are becoming into a man's body. They're becoming 6'1", and teaching them and understanding how to receive a puck versus sliding into saves, right? For a lot of these young, small goalies, they have to slide into shots just because they're not big enough. So once they get into they're getting bigger, and now we have to get them to understand you're in position, you just need a butterfly and try to make a save. So having these like a little bit smaller nets would allow these kids to be able to stay in position more. I know that's part of the USA hockey development, is they have that smaller net. So goalies have to learn how to be positionally sound versus trying to more or less just slide and do whatever they can to get into that position, right? So they look at the game different, and I think there's a lot of things that we can get better at for sure. But there's obviously some very strong goalies in Canada.
This could be an easy question or it could be a difficult question. Are you finding the rewards in what you're doing? Are you happy with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say that, even going back to the thought process of I have to versus I get to, I never have to be a goalie coach. It's I get to be a goalie coach, because I know I wouldn't be able to survive sitting in an office or working construction day in, day out. Like being able to be on the ice, shooting pucks with kids and having fun and more or less being a kid day in, day out. And then seeing how the rewards they get, not just on the ice, but like seeing good people and turning these kids into good people with helping them make decisions between on and off the ice and who they are it's a very rewarding thing.
I think for any one of us to get to point A to point B, to just wake up in the morning, sometimes we need the support of our family.
Absolutely.
And I think family has been very important to you. I don't know if we can put up a picture here. These people probably mean a tremendous amount to you. Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Who are these guys?
My sons, Rory on the left and Bo on the right in the wheelchair. They love everything that I do for sure. Playing hockey, we're in a program called Lacrossing Barriers there. My wife helped set that up at the YMCA in Grimsby, and everything I do is for them and trying to be a part of them, and even being able to be a goalie coach, I'm able to be with my sons on a schedule that works best for me, which is an amazing thing, and having that ability to shape my life around what they need and helping my wife and my kids is absolutely everything.
And Bo's been a special one, I would presume, too. Yeah, some difficulties, but doing okay.
Yeah. He was born with a disease called spinal muscular atrophy. Mm-hmm. We noticed he was born September 26, 2019, so COVID wasn't too far after that. So getting into the hospital was something that was really tough just because of everything that was going on. So when he was diagnosed, we had recognized that he had a tremor and he was losing weakness, and doctors were really pushing us off. And my wife is an absolute fighter and a warrior, and she kept pushing and pushing, and we eventually got a blood test, and we found out, I believe it was at about 14 months, he had SMA type 2, mm-hmm. And it's a neurological disease that affects your nerves, and at some point, if he didn't get treatment, he would have passed away, but with everything that we did, we had a great team that set us up. He got treatment, and my wife and we ended up living in isolation for about 14 months, just because even something as a common cold when he was getting treatment could have killed him. So we lived in isolation, and we lived in Montreal for a little while he got something that was the closest thing to a cure. It's not a cure, but the day he was diagnosed, our doctor said to us, most of the day I blacked out just because of how intense everything was. But at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, he said, look at it this way, the effort you put in is the strength that he'll get. And I remember that feeling of, I know exactly what that means. That means just work hard every single day. And I have an amazing wife who has the same mindset as I do, and we set it to ourselves from the beginning. We're going to find a way to get 1% better every single day for him, and whatever that means. And it's a learning process, everything that we've had to do between physio and adaptive equipment, and you're looking at vehicles, and there's so many things that we had to navigate, but she's a great partner, and everything that we had to do was for him, and he's getting stronger every day, and he's a happy kid, and we have another son, Rory, who's an amazing kid as well. So I'm very lucky, and I always say, like, hockey saved me between getting that moment away from from reality and being a kid on the ice to having the hockey community completely back us up with everything that we had to go through, to the mindset that I had to learn to endure, to battle and get up through hard times.
You said a word there that kind of touched me there, and I have known, because I've read about your story, off the ice in that sense, as that you've had tremendous help from the community as well.
Absolutely, yeah. From like everybody from the hockey community, people that we don't even know reached out and they donated money to us to help us, because again we were out of work for 14 months, and the equipment that we've had to buy, and it's not a cheap thing that we've had to go through by any means. And even we lost all our money through COVID, and then just being able to survive all that. But again, I have my wife and I are very resilient in pushing ourselves, and the people that we had back us up were ones that saved us for sure.
Tremendous story, and so glad to see that you're getting through the other side, and both your sons are doing well. I think that's an outstanding story, and something, as you said, I get some shirts daily, but you do it with a smile on your face, and it is so awesome to see you talk about that. Hey, young goaltenders, this is the guy that is going to teach you a little something. If there's people out there, and I know there are, they got young goaltenders, how can they contact you?
They can. Our website is powerplayhockey.ca, and my email is bryce@ohagangoaltending.com.
Bryce, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Folks, as you just seen and heard, we love talking sports with people who are making a difference on the local, provincial, and national scene. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast want you. Contact me and all of us on many of our CHCH media platforms, and let's have a chat. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button, because we do need your feedback. The outstanding minds and hands that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. We'll see you tomorrow.